Railway Conversations with Doc Frank.
Hello and welcome back to the show. My guest today is Gary McGregor from Sydney in Australia, a transport strategist who developed key planning documents that shaped the long-term strategy for Sydney. In this second part of our conversation, expect to learn the effect of line capacity on whether a metro line should branch out or not, examples of great interchanges between different railways, criteria for picking a cross-city alignment of a metro, why the focus should be on passengers rather than trains, which metro system inspired the evolution in Sydney, how to get a leading-edge solution while avoiding bleeding edge, and much more. Please enjoy and subscribe so that you get notified about all the other insightful episodes of this podcast, nearly 100 by now. And you can support the continuation of the show even more by noticing and acting on the following. Hi, this is Doc Frank, and before we get into the podcast, I want to quickly tell you about ONO, O-N-O. In case you don't know what it means, here in Australia it means or nearest offer, and that means that a price for a certain thing is negotiable. So how does it work and how may that be of interest to you? If you're interested in training or education on advanced modern signaling or the capacity increase of railways, then please do step 1 up here and check out my training portal docfranktraining.podia.com. You will find a globally unique collection of training offers that you can't find anywhere else. If you do, let me know. I'm always happy to learn. There are courses about the blueprint for high capacity signaling, the mindset for high capacity railways, and of course the flagship CBTC training that has been the longest running CBTC training in the world, even though it's been regularly updated. If you have found anything that's of interest to you, then we come to step number 2. You look at the regular price. If you think that's fair, that's good, then just procure the training and enjoy. I'm happy with that. If you want to save a few bucks, then send me an email to training@docfrank.com.au. And in that email, let me know which training or conference recording you are interested in and what is the price that you want to pay for it. And if I consider your offer reasonable, if it makes sense for me, I will accept it. Otherwise, I will let you know, and maybe we have a little negotiation along the way as well. And then you have the opportunity to enjoy world-class training on signaling at prices that are below the nominal package. So I think it's a good offer. It won't last forever. The current intent is to keep it running to the end of this calendar year, 2024. So don't wait to the last minute. Check out my training portal. And if you find something, then send me an email and let's negotiate. But now, please enjoy the upcoming podcast episode.
Our Metro team and the Sydney Metro, as it established, very much felt that the success and high performance operations network was best addressed by not having branches. So both those factors were pressures that led to what you have today, which is a single Bankstown line conversion.
There was a map in the Sydney's Rail Future which actually had 2 branches south of the CBD, one going to Hurstville that you mentioned, and then there was another one going to Lidcombe just before Bankstown. And the problem that I see with that, and that's probably one of the reasons why it was abandoned at the end of the day. Every time you branch something off, you want to operate something there, which means you take operation away from the main line, which my understanding was the one going to Bankstown. So at the moment, Sydney Metro through the CBD operates at 15 trains per hour in the peak,
Yep.
which sounds not a lot for metro, but it's enough for the current capacity demand. So
Yeah.
if you want to split this up in Sydenham and say, okay, well, only
Yeah.
some trains, not all 15, go to Bankstown, and
Yeah.
some others go to Hurstville, how do you want to do it? 10 plus 5? And then you basically
Yeah.
end up with services where you say 5 trains an hour to Hurstville. That's ridiculous. That's not high capacity. This is nothing.
Yeah.
If you wanted to run more trains, both from Hurstville and from Bankstown, then you've got a problem that you feed too many trains into the CBD and you don't know where to leave them in the north. Yeah, so
Yeah.
either in the north you would have to have an additional branch. For example, there was a
Yeah.
discussion going to Spit Junction, for example, from
There was, yes.
Victoria Cross, or from Crow's Nest, from Victoria Cross probably, which is now no longer continued. Or you have to turn back trains, for example, in Chatswood, but you don't have a turn back in Chatswood. So that means the number of trains that can come from the northwest is the determining factor, how many trains you will have in the CBD and how many trains you can distribute south of the CBD. And I think the capacity demand there is really for all those trains to go to Bankstown in order
Yeah.
to have the relief in the southwest that you were after.
Look, I think the right solution was made. At the time, even that was quite a radical solution. And part of the intention of this, I just realised I'm just going to have to wave the lights going out in this room. Sorry. If you don't move for a while. The part of what we're trying to do is to actually, the perception was the first time we did the metro, we doing an amazing product for that corridor, but we hadn't solve problems for the rest of Sydney.
Yeah.
So we tried to make this new metro solution solve the problems for the rest of Sydney as much as possible. But I do agree with you that I think the right decision was made, that we probably did split it a bit too thin, and that I think you've got a better solution. So often when you see a project evolve, you often see decisions made that cut cost or make it worse. But I think these are solutions that actually a better outcome. And I think as we see this product evolve, we'll say let's focus on a great interchange between this and another rail line rather than trying to plug multiple lines into this metro. So I think it's a really good solution.
The separation, I mentioned the separation of Sydney Metro before, and I did say that I consider this a very, very smart idea.
Yeah.
And because the operation of a metro system, as you said yourself, is very, very different from the way that the suburban network in Sydney is operated, has to be. And by separating the two systems, you avoid any interference of one network to the other. And for example, if you stand on a platform in Chatswood where you have a platform on one side, you've got the North Shore line operated by Sydney Trains with double deckers. On the other side of the platform, you have the Sydney Metro terminus, which now continues to go into the CBD. You will notice very, very different operational patterns, all the way down to different passenger behaviors on both sides of the platform, which sounds very strange, but it's not if you think about the differences.
Totally
yeah. And so what I think is important, and I think Sydney has solved that really quite well, is an interaction between the metro network, the emerging metro network, and the existing suburban network with interchanges. And Chatswood is the perfect example where people can basically get off the metro train, get onto the North Shore line to of Sydney Trains going to the CBD. And now these days it's probably rather the other way around, that people coming down from Hornsby on the North Shore line want to get on a metro train because that's actually the faster way to get into the CBD. And that
was part of the.
And in the CBD, you've got very nice interchanges as well. Central, there's a lot been written about Central, the interchange there. What I personally like very, very much is the Vineyard Walk, where you have a footpath connecting Vineyard Station, which is one of the biggest city stations of Sydney Trains, with Barangaroo, which is one of the new stations of the Sydney Metro CBD sections. And walking down underground along Vineyard Walk, which is well illuminated, and you've got murals there, and nice images and moving things and so on. It's so much nicer than going on street level with all the traffic lights and all the cars and buses and honking and everything. So I think that's a very, very good example of a well-designed interchange that really makes it attractive for passengers to move between one service and the other service.
And that's so Wynyard Walk was really effectively that as an investment decision was made when the government was committed to Barangaroo and quite a large office precinct in an area. It used to be a port, but wasn't connected well to rail. Interestingly, when we did Sydney's Rail Future, we didn't contemplate. You mentioned this issue about interchanges. There's a lot. Our view was there was a tension between, do you actually do this new metro down the western end of the city, like it was called Metro West at the time, down sort of Kent Street. Now, the benefit of that, you'd be close to Wynyard, or do you go in the middle of the city and then you have really good interchange at Martin Place and Town Hall? I think that was the right decision. But I think they got the best of both worlds because they also got a station in Barangaroo. It's a bit to the north of Barangaroo. But the metro was really, as you say, it was really designed about that interchange. There was a lot of focus on the interchange at Chatswood. In fact, critics of the metro were saying that Chatswood would be overwhelmed. I was very confident it wouldn't be because I've seen what happens on platform 6. We measured what happens on platform 16 and 17 at Central and 18 and 19, and it was never going to be anything like that. But we had Chatswood, you have Martin Place, you have Central and Sydenham. I think you'll also find people getting off the Illawarra to get on the metro. So the interchanges are, and it's focusing. I think sometimes you can focus operationally on what the train does, but you need to focus more on what the customer does and how does that customer move about its system.
Yeah, and interchanges are completely normal for metro style systems. I mean, if you consider London Underground, for example, you've got almost two different types of network. You've got the subsurface lines and the deep tube, and there are interchanges where both train lines are basically only 30 meters apart, but vertically 30 meters apart. And then you've got escalators and lifts and stuff like that to get from one line to the other. So the other great decision I think that Sydney Metro made was not only to separate the Sydney Metro network from the Sydney Trains network, but also to segregate all the different lines of the Sydney Metro network. So if in the future you will build Metro West coming in from Parramatta into the CBD, there will be a touch point, there will be an interchange with the existing CBD line, but there won't be a junction. So the two lines remain separate, and that gives you the opportunity for technical innovations on the new metro lines. You can do things differently. You can have different train fleets from different providers. You even can have different operators to basically encourage a kind of competition between the different operators in order to get the best service for everyone. And a lot of those things I've seen in Singapore, or at least I could see a lot of parallels between how Singapore does their metro, having two operators, having all lines segregated from each other. And I was wondering, and maybe you can enlighten me there, was Singapore one of the role models for this development of Sydney Metro, or was it more like looking at all kinds of different metros and then basically saying, oh, well, this seems to be best practice, let's do it this way?
Probably the one that influenced us more was MTR in Hong Kong. They ultimately ended up being the operator.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of we did a lot of work benchmarking how those flows worked. I think Singapore would be equally applicable, but at the time the MTR in Hong Kong was used as our benchmark, and we did a lot of analysis of what are the things that made that successful that could be applied to the Sydney context. Obviously, some of the volumes and the density of flows are higher than we'll get to in Sydney, but just some of the approaches to movement of people and a good customer experience, convenient interchange were very the MTR in Hong Kong was probably our strongest reference point.
Yeah. Also from a technical point of view as well, and that didn't have so much to do with Sydney's rail future. That more evolved later on when the decision was made to procure Sydney Metro Northwest, is that they basically said we want a technical solution which has been stress tested somewhere else before.
Yeah.
So what Sydney Metro
Yeah.
decided to basically copy the signaling solution from Hong Kong, from the South Island line, which
Yeah.
was due to commission about 2 years before Sydney Metro Northwest. And by doing
Yeah.
that, basically having all the teething problems solved in Hong Kong and getting a system to Metro which was already tested, where all the teething problems were gone, which I think was another very, very smart decision, which helped a lot to get into service without major problems.
Yeah, there was a slogan, "Leading edge, not bleeding edge,"
Yes.
was what we wanted. So no one wanted. What we wanted is, as you say, if you actually don't have separation, you sort of have to have the lowest common denominator of network. We wanted to get those improvements, but we didn't want. Part of the whole idea was you didn't want to be the first implementing something either. So you're totally right. So let's get something modern. One of the benefits when you have a new line and building a completely standalone line, you can pick the leading edge thing that's been implemented. It's modern, but implemented somewhere else as well. So that was a key, and that was a key driver of the need for this separated network as well.
About a year after Sydney's Rail Future came out, that was in June 2012. Then in December 2012, the long-term transport master plan came out, which obviously was already in preparation when Sydney's Rail Future was written.
Correct.
And another half year later, you and I worked together on the rail system strategy, which was purely for the suburban rail network in Sydney. How did this all fit together? Was that all planned and basically saying, okay, well, Sydney's Rail Future was like the overarching rail document sitting underneath the even wider transport master plan, and now underneath Sydney's Rail Future we now look at what do we do with the suburban network, that's the rail system strategy. What do we do with rapid transit, that's Sydney Metro. How did this fit together?
Yeah, that's a good point. They were definitely part of the same package. So Sydney's Rail Future had 5 stages, 3, 4, and 5 related to, or 3 related to Northwest. 4 was CBD, which is now, so we've finished stage 4 and 5, the southern sector conversion. We mentioned some changes to it, but happening to Bankstown. So they were the Sydney Metro stages. The story was that one of the things about Sydney Rail Future is don't get so excited about the shiny new toy, because you've still got 302 stations or whatever it is for customers on the existing network. And so how can we actually, part of the story we want to have is don't let an aspiration for a standalone product not make you want to challenge the status quo on the existing network and not wanting to have continuous improvement. So the view was that we needed, so there were a range of strategies being developed. There was a new sectorisation plan. And one of them, and I was asked to coordinate this one as a business rather than technically led strategy, is what is the story around systems that could then inform investment decisions. So it was very clear that and there was a lot of noise coming in then that the Metro was going to be as a new system, a CBDC, proprietary system. There's a lot. We've been going along with ATP for so long on an established network. There's a lot of noise around. So the whole ETCS and CBDC, there was a whole lot of also aspiration about, can you actually ask for more from your systems? Then train protection and the safety was obviously the paramount thing, but can you at that moment actually ask more of that system? And what are the business changes that you might need to actually not only have a very safe system, but to have a higher capacity, higher reliability, and better information system. So the idea was a rail system strategy, and I was asked to lead that, to focus on strategic intent and business need, and to work with Sydney Trains with transport Clearly, at that time, the standalone system, the Sydney Metro, it was very clear what the rail system's approach would be.
Yeah.
It was more challenging, and the idea was to actually inform and retest our aspirations on, and also, are we the existing network had been through the automatic train protection and moving to the ETCS system. Is that the right approach with where we want to be? So we started with some definitions of what we wanted to achieve. What are the business preconditions for that? Greater sectorisation was actually part of that as well. You couldn't aim for the same level of performance on a shared network, on a network where you were utilising your assets by bringing multiple trains from multiple places onto converging on one network. You have multiple forms of rolling stock. You're never going to get the same level of capacity performance as a metro. But one of the things we were saying is do not just accept the status quo. Look what's happening around the world, look what's happening on those commuter rail networks, and what can we actually do to lift our performance. So that was the key of the rail system strategy. And I remember, Frank, you were helping us, and I think we were talking with suppliers at the time. It was very easy, the product they would offer for a metro. I remember talking about city flow this and city flow that and all sorts of CBTC systems. But what do you actually do to lift the performance of the established network? And I actually detected there was a lot of enthusiasm for that. There was enthusiasm. Sydney Trains, the digital technology people, everyone wanted to deliver those more and lift the performance of the established network. A lot of goodwill for that. But it was also a harder slog. When you are dealing with assets of a range of ages, your range of, as I said, range of performance, you can't have a simple procurement strategy when you've got a network of thousands of kilometres together. So it was a really important activity. I appreciated your advice into that, Frank, and many colleagues over the years. And it actually culminated in a report that was then peer-reviewed by a panel. And that panel actually was Arthur Smith as an experienced person with established operations. We had Andy Harrison from the UK and Ian McCulloch, who a signalling person who also had experience in the Sydney Trains network. And basically it sort of gave some principles for, I suppose, what turned into the digital system strategy that then that other people did start taking forward to try and lift the performance of the established network.
Yeah, yeah. A key thing, I mean, I have worked both on ETCS and CBTC technologies, which was one of the reasons why I came in working for you as a subject matter expert, because when you have to compare both technologies anyway, you want to have somebody who is not clearly biased towards the one direction or towards the other direction. And I did a very similar task in Perth at the same time, and the outcome at Perth was CBTC, while the outcome in Sydney was ETCS level 2, with later addition of automatic train operation. Regarding automatic train operation, that was actually the only signaling reference for the existing suburban network in Sydney's rail future, which in 2012 was really, really visionary. I mean, ATO over ETCS at the time was on the horizon, but on the far horizon. So Sydney's future, Sydney's rail future, writing about improving the capacity of the existing suburban network by using automatic train operations was very, very much forward looking, very far forward looking as well, I might say. And I believe the decision was right in hindsight, and Sydney would have been quite disappointed with CBTC for the entire suburban network, simply because there are many lines on that network which are not really suitable for the application of CBTC. So when introducing CBTC, you've got this very high expectations that the system performs in a similar way as it does on Sydney Metro. But then you have something like, I don't know, the North Shore line with sharp curves, with rocky outcrops on the side of the track. And you will not be able, or you wouldn't have been able to achieve similar performance, like metro style performance and capacity with the CBTC system. And then it comes to the point where you say, well, why do we spend so much money for a system like this if it doesn't give us the performance that we would have expected and that we have seen in metro railways around the world, simply because it isn't a metro railway, right?
And we had to go through. You're totally right. And there was things like sharing tracks with freight trains, including ATC
Yes.
trains that we, well, not ATC trains, but trains coming off the ATC network, which at that time we thought might have been with, satellite sort of ATMS sort of system. So there was it was a very big. I actually thought probably my personal view is that the most fascinating rail systems questions were the existing network. You actually knew, and a Metro team, they did an amazing job. They got great systems, but you could see what was going to happen there. It was much harder to establish network. We knew that ATO over ETCS was ambitious, but we wanted to put that challenge out there. And the advice of people, including yourself, I think at the time, and other in the industry was, at this moment it's bleeding edge, but there will be a time when it's only leading edge, and let's start positioning our network for that.
Hi, this is Doc Frank again. I hope you enjoyed the second part of my conversation with Gary. If you have missed part 1, that was episode 95, please make sure you check it out. And also make sure you watch the third and last part of this conversation, which will be the upcoming episode 97. Thank you for listening.